After months of perseverance and now a high-profile prisoner swap, Brittney Griner is back on U.S. soil. The WNBA star is now in her home state of Texas, undergoing a medical evaluation after spending nearly 300 days behind bars in Russia, including time at that notorious exile colony. Griner was seen landing at Joint Base San Antonio Laughlin in the early hours of the morning, Russia releasing her yesterday as part of that high-profile prisoner swap with the U.S., exchanging her for that arms dealer Viktor Bout, a.k.a. Merchant of Death. Dramatic video from Russian state media actually showing Griner right here and Bout during the exchange on the tarmac in Abu Dhabi. Join me now, ABC News' Patrick Reevell in London, and White House correspondent MaryAlice Parks there on the North Lawn. So, MaryAlice, we're learning that Griner is now reunited with her wife, Cherelle. What else can you tell us about that? And when will we get to hear from both of them?
Yeah, Kira, that's a big question. That's really up to them. But you're right. The White House just moments ago confirmed that she has been reunited with her wife, Cherelle. When she landed in San Antonio, she was immediately taken to Brooke Army Medical Center. This is a facility that really specializes in this kind of work. When someone comes home, an American comes home after being held hostage, they're offered a wide range of support services to make sure that they're mentally doing okay, physically doing okay. But of course, she's a civilian, so she can decide how much help, how much health care she wants from the government and when she's ready to go home. But we know that she is now there with her wife. The two of them have been reunited, and she will be able to go home whenever she and her family decides that that's right for them.
And Patrick, Bout gave an interview apparently with Russian state media upon his return to Moscow. Tell us what he said.
Yeah, we've just been reading this interview that was actually conducted by a woman called Mary Butina, who some people might remember was a Russian woman who was arrested in the U.S. and jailed for a year back in 2018 for acting as an illegal agent of influence. But in the interview with her, Bout basically describes being in shock and that he doesn't really know what to think, and that he's trying to get used to being back with his wife because he's obviously been away for 14 years. It was the last time that he saw them. He also, downplayed his importance to the Russian government, saying that he felt he was released because of the campaign by people like Butina and people in Russia. And he also actually commented about the Hollywood film Lord of War, the Nicolas Cage film, which was inspired by him. And he said that the producers of that film should have come to him and he would have given them a more interesting story. But basically the message he seemed to be putting was that he was part of a clash between the US and Russia. At one point he says that now they need to move forward and that Russia needs to win.
So, MaryAlice, the Biden administration now facing some criticism, a lot of criticism, depending on who you talk to, for swiping Griner for Bout, saying that it wasn't an equal trade given the crimes that Bout had committed. So what exactly, how is the White House coming forward and justifying their move?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kira. We've seen a number of Republican senators especially bring up this point, say that they just don't think it was a fair trade, that they say the White House should have tried harder to maybe get 2 Americans back for one, Viktor Bout, who's, had been sitting there in prison for such unbelievable, heinous crimes, that it was just not comparable. I think that the White House officials we've talked to do feel pretty confident in this trade. They feel like in some ways, at least, Bout sort of served some justice. He was extradited for his crimes. He went through the court process. He was found guilty. He served 10 years in prison. I think there's this sense that while he didn't serve his entire sentence, he sat behind bars and potentially long enough to no longer be able to get back in the game. There's a lot of experts that think he's just been out of it too long, that he's no longer some kind of threat. That's a big question. And frankly, we've heard from this president, his own words, say that he just thought he had a moral obligation to do what was necessary to bring any American home, to make a deal, to make sure that Griner was back on U.S. soil. Kira.
So, Patrick, what more do we know about what the Russians may have wanted here to also secure the release of former Marine Paul Whelan? Because he, of course, was very disappointed, happy for Brittney, disappointed for his situation, wondering why he's still sitting in a cell 4 years later.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important question, right? What did the Russians want to free Paul Whelan as well as Brittney Griner? And a U.S. official has been telling reporters that at one point the Biden administration did bluntly offer to trade Bout for Paul Whelan, and that the Russians turned that down and said it could only be Griner for Bout. We know that over the summer, when the Biden administration offered Bout for the first time, the Russians came back and saying they also wanted this man who'd been convicted in Germany for assassinating a former Chechen commander and who has been linked to Russian intelligence, basically an FSB assassin. And that was seen as a non-starter, basically, as not a serious offer from the Russians because it's just asking for too much. You have someone who has been taken who is a tourist, and you're asking for a person who is an assassin and who, if was freed, is potentially dangerous. We also know that in the US, there is a Russian cyber criminal who has come up repeatedly, has been floated in discussions, who is serving a 27-year sentence in California. But this just goes back to how difficult it is now to find someone who isn't a serious criminal who can be traded.
All right, still a lot to talk about, and boy, do we want to hear from Brittney and her wife together, don't we? Everyone's going to be going for those interviews. Patrick, MaryAlice, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.